Hi, I'm Rita. Welcome back to my booktube channel, Life Worth Reading. So today I'll be doing my February wrap-up, but I'm actually going to be doing it in a slightly different way. I found that I was getting really bored with the way that I used to do my wrap-ups because I love watching them, but I hate filming them. Literally, the last wrap-up that I ever did was my mid-month wrap-up for January, and I was literally cutting my own hair in that video because I was just looking for a fun way to talk about the books that I had recently read. And so because I just can't keep cutting my hair every single month, I thought of a new way to do my wrap-ups. But first of all, before I get into the actual way that I'm going to do my wrap-up, I wanted to talk a little bit about some stats that I have. I have my story graph open up on my computer here, and it says that I read 13 books, but in my reading journal, I wrote down 14. I think my reading journal is right, but I'm not sure which book is missing from here. But it says 13 books, and I read 4,711 pages, which is a lot. I read almost 5,000 pages in a single month, which is a lot for me. And I think 14 books, I had a couple DNFs in there, so some of those counted, some of those didn't. But I think that 14 books overall is the most that I've ever read in a single month ever. So I'm really happy about that. In terms of genre, I have my biggest genre with 5 books being LGBTQIA+ books, which is very exciting. I didn't really know that I was doing that. Then we have contemporary with 4. I read 3 thrillers and 3 fantasy books. Then I read 2 romance, literary, and historical fiction, and then only 1 young adult mystery, horror, crime. It does not equal like 1 book, 1 genre. I think that some of the books have a couple of genres in them, so that's why these numbers are a little bit weird. Then these formats are not correct, but what ended up happening is that I read 2 physical books in February, 9 audiobooks, and 5 ebooks. So audiobooks have been my saving grace lately, and SCRIBD is so done with me because I just keep listening to them and it just keep restricting my library. And besties, it is not working out between me and SCRIBD because I just want to keep reading and they do not let me. They don't. But yeah, audiobooks have been my saving grace lately, and I listened to 9 in February, which is a lot. And then we got to the most exciting part, which is the rating. So I have my average rating of 3.63, and I think that's because I'm being a little bit more harsh ratings this year because in my first few years of booktube and of reading again, I would just give everything 4 stars. I was just like, I didn't like this, 4 stars. And I'm trying to be a little bit more realistic with my ratings. Not that they matter much, but it matters to me. I like rating my books according to my own taste. So yeah, I had an average rating of 3.63, but I did have 3 5-star books. No, overall I had like 5 because I had 1 4.5, 1 4.75, and then 3 5 stars. So it was like 5 books that were over 4.5 rating, which is very incredible to me. Okay, so now that we have those stats out of the way, I am going to tell you about the way that I'm going to do my wrap-ups now. So pretty much this idea is not the most original one, but I think it is in this format. So I think that you've all seen people using wheels before to choose their TBRs or to just randomize a couple of things. And I thought that I would create my own wheel with some bookish superlatives, some bookish prompts, and then I could turn the wheel the amount of times that I've read a book each month. So this month it'll be 14 times, so I'll spin the wheel 14 times, and the prompt that comes up with it I have to assign to a book that I read this month. So instead of talking about the book and then assigning them prompts, I'm going to just completely randomize the order in which I talk them about. And I just think it's going to be a very fun way to talk about my wrap-up because I don't have an order in which to go in, and I just have my list of books that I read, and I'm going to randomize the prompts that appear, and then we have to assign the prompt to a book that I read in February. I hope that I explained this well enough. We're just going to get started with my first prompt, and then we'll just have to see. Here we have my wheel. It is looking a little bit crusty. Like wheels with a lot of text and a lot of options don't really work out. I have 30 bookish prompts and bookish superlatives. I'm going to keep adding more, but these are the ones that I came up with now. Me and the people on Twitter that I asked to give me superlatives and bookish prompts. And we're just going to randomize it and see what comes first. Okay, so we have our first prompt, and that is, could have been a 5-star read if it was written by someone else. Okay, so for this prompt, I'm going to assign My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. This is a horror book that came out in 2021, and I give it like 2.5, 3 stars max, but I think it's more of a 2.5 because this book is about Jade, our half Native American girl that lives in, I think, Idaho, or is it Indiana? I'm not sure. She lives in like a state that's very nature heavy. And so what ends up happening is that they start constructing this huge apartment complexes on the other side of the lake, and people are a little bit mad at it. And the thing about this book is that our main character Jade, she is completely, first of all, mentally ill, trigger warning for suicide attempts, and she also is like deeply in love with slasher films. And so she has like this really weird obsession with specifically slasher movies, and she notices that in her town there are like signs that a slasher film could happen, so like in real life. And so she starts assigning these roles to like people around her. And so there's this new girl called, I know it starts with an L. I'll write it here. I don't remember. And she assigns the new girl the role of the final girl, which is the last girl that survives a slasher film. And so she's just like really obsessed with this idea, and some people start dying, and then like it's supposed to like shit goes down, and it's supposed to be like this really explosive ending, but I just didn't care for it. A lot of people find this book boring because it is extremely long. I didn't find it boring because I actually weirdly liked Jade, and I liked this. Each chapter ends with like this essay that she's doing on horror films that she's sending to her teacher, and so that part was really fun, and I liked being inside her head, even though it was kind of weird sometimes. But the action, it did not follow through. Basically, I got to the end and I was listening to the audiobook and I was like, I don't understand anything that's happening. There was too much happening at once. I didn't understand any of it, and I got to the end and I was like, what just happened? And so I think that this book had a really great potential of being a 5-star read if it was written by someone other than Stephen Graham Jones, especially because I've already read The Only Good Indians by this author and I didn't love it either. So I think it's just a problem of me not vibing with his writing. And so I think that this book had really great potential to be a 5-star because the story in itself was very, very interesting. But the way it was written, it did not vibe with me. I did not care for it, and it was just very, very confusing. There was too much happening at once, and so it ended up being like a 2.5 star for me. Okay, so that was our first prompt. Was that fun for you? Because that was fun for me. Let's find out what the next prompt is. Okay, we have a book you wish you DNF'd. Okay, I think I know which book I'm going to assign to this prompt. And sadly, that book is The Beautiful Ones by Silvia Moreno Garcia. I buddy read this with Jess over from Verity Books. I'm going to leave her channel in the description below. And this book, besties, it was not good. I give it 2 stars, and I don't understand because I do like the writing of Silvia Moreno Garcia. I had only read Mexican Gothic by her, but I really, really enjoyed that one book. So this was like a historical fiction set in, I think, 19th century France, and it follows this family of the beautiful ones, so like this rich, beautiful people, like very privileged people. And our main character, the most interesting thing about her is that she has telekinesis, so she can move things with her mind, and it's an accepted thing. Not like accepted, but it's like a thing that exists and people know about it. But they're like considered like freaks that do like shows. So like not people of like privileged families do this kind of thing. And so our main character is called Nina, and she's kind of this, she has this cousin that married a beautiful one, and she is kind of a beautiful one, but not quite, because she's not as graceful and she's more plain looking, and she doesn't have all these manners that the other beautiful ones have. And so she's very scrutinized by this woman that her cousin married, and she's called Valerie. And we see both their POVs in different chapters. And basically this book was a whole mess, because what happens is that Nina falls in love with this man called Hector, and he is a telekinesis performer. And basically what she ends up finding out, this is like 15% into the book, but if you don't want to know anything about it, I will just put a spoiler here and I'll finish it. But it's like you find this out very early on in the book. And basically she falls in love with this man called Hector, and Hector had an affair with Valerie. And so they had been madly in love 10 years ago. So he's much older than her. I think that Nina is like 19 and he's like 30 something. And basically Hector starts courting Nina just to be near Valerie. And I thought that was so cheap. I hate those types of romances. And I thought that that was very, very not well done. And the whole story was just not for me. Because like they developed this relationship and this friendship, but it's all based on lies because she doesn't know that he just wants to be with Valerie. And so it was just very bad. And Valerie was just a horrible person in general. And I wish that I did DNF this book because the ending was not worth it. I didn't like the romance, and that was pretty much all there was to like. So if I didn't like the romance, I didn't like anything. And I kind of wish that I had DNF this. But I pulled through because it was my buddy read with Jess. And I don't actually regret it, but it was not for me, besties. Okay, so what's the next prompt? Okay, now we have a book you'd recommend anyone. And I have to do this, I'm sorry. The book that I'd recommend anyone is Butter Honey Pig Bread by Francesca Chiuazzi. I am recommending this book to anyone because this book is terribly underrated, and I finally got some people to read it. I don't think it was because of me particularly, but Mafalda and Casey just read that for their live show, and I was in the live show, so I'm going to leave a description in the link for that live show. And we talked about this book, and we all gave it 5 stars because this is the best book in existence. You will not regret reading it, besties. This is it. Like, this is the pinnacle of good writing. This is the pinnacle of a beautiful story. It's just, it has everything that you need. It has sapphic relationships. It has a sapphic main character. It has beautiful sisterly relationships, beautiful mother-daughter relationships. It's just everything that you could ever want, and it has the best writing, and it was my favorite book of 2021. I just reread it in February, and it was already the best book of 2022. So this book is unmatched in my opinion, and I think that this book needs to be read by everyone. Like, you will not regret it. This is one of the best books that I have ever read, and it will be on my all-time favorite list forever. Now that I got my Butter Honey Pig Bread plug out of the way, let's move on to the next prompt. Okay, so we have a book with the most romantic scene. But I didn't read very romantic books this month, so let me think about this one. Okay, so for this one, I am going to mention Writers and Lovers by Lily King. This is a book that I read for a video, and I gave it, I think, 4.5 stars. I really, really enjoyed this book. It took me a little bit to get into it, but it's basically it's a contemporary, but it's set in the 90s, so I'm not sure if that's historical fiction or not. I think not. I'm gonna call it a contemporary, about this girl called Casey, and she's in her late 20s, and she's still a waitress because she is trying to publish her novel. And so she's the only one of her friends that hasn't given up on that dream yet. And we basically just follow her. Her mother has just recently died, and her boyfriend has just dumped her. And this book only works if you really connect with the main character, which I did. I loved Casey, and I loved like following along on his journey with her. The writing was incredible. And it doesn't have like the most romantic scenes specifically, but I really enjoyed the way that she got into certain relationships and the way that certain moments were described, because there were some things that were not particularly like the most romantic. Like, it wasn't like a romance book, but some of the parts really got to me, and it got me really emotional because I feel like Lily King just has a very beautiful way with words, and she got into a certain relationship by the end that really, really, really got to me, and I really, really loved. And it just made me feel all types of things, and I cried a little. So definitely Writers and Lovers by Lily King. It was probably the most romantic book that I read this month, because I didn't read a lot of romantic books this month, but that one was definitely one that I recommend. All right, let's keep going. Okay, so next up we had the best main character of the month. Let me figure this out. I think the best main character for this month will go to Scarlet in They Never Learned by Lynn Fargo, because God, I love this book so much. I gave it 5 stars. It was such a good time. And it's a thriller book about this professor at a university, and she is a serial killer. So she kills all her students and the faculty that does people wrong. So not like personal connections to her, but if like a girl is raped on campus and a guy is blamed for it but doesn't suffer any of the consequences, then she literally kills them. And so we followed this character that is so deranged, so smart in the way that she's doing things. Towards the end she got a little bit sloppy, but like she's so smart. She is so like weirdly funny, and I just love being in her head because it was such a good time. And I think that she was my favorite main character. We also had the POV of Carly, which I also loved, but it was very different. Like Carly is a student at the university, and she's just kind of discovering herself with her roommate Allison, and she is just kind of discovering her sexuality and discovering what she likes and what she doesn't like. So it was still a very interesting POV, but I think my favorite main character was definitely Scarlett. It was such a fun book, and it was such a fun premise. Like you're just rooting for the serial killer to keep on killing bad men, and I loved her. So best main character award of the month goes to Scarlett. Let's find out what the next prompt is. Okay, we got a repeat prompt, so I'm just going to do it again because I have like 30 prompts. There's no reason for me to be repeating this. So I'm going to do it again. Ooh, this is a good one. Oh, I meant to say most likely. Most likely to end up on the worst of the year list. I've already talked about my 2-star read of the month, which was The Beautiful Ones. So I'm going to talk about one that had a little bit of a higher rating, but it is most likely to end up on the most disappointing books of the year because this book was not it. And that is King of Cards by Leigh Bardugo. Where to start with this one? I was so excited to read this book. I buddy read this with Tara. I'm going to also leave the description to her channel down below. And basically, this book was just such a disappointment. I ended up giving it 2.5 stars. I rounded up to 3 on Goodreads simply because I respect this author and what she was trying to do. But God, I did not like this book. It was boring. It was over 500 pages of almost no plot. And we follow Nikolai and Zoya, and spoilers for the Grishaverse trilogy, the Shadow and Bone trilogy, I'm going to leave it here. And we follow Nikolai as he's now the king of Ravka, and we follow Zoya, that is his general. And I like their relationship. They're not in a relationship, but I like their dynamic. I liked their banter. I really liked them as characters. But the Nikolai POV was just boring as hell. There is nothing happening in this book. It's just like war and politics, but like not interesting war and not interesting politics. And then we also follow Nina's POV on a completely different journey with 2 other Grisha. And it was a mess. Like, why were these 2 storylines intertwined? Like, they did not meet anywhere in the book. And it just felt so disjointed. Like, most of the time it just felt like it was just a mess. It was disjointed. I loved POVs, like Nina's POV the most. And I didn't care about Nikolai, and that was his book. Like, this is his book, and I did not give a single fuck about what was happening to him. I just wanted to follow Nina on her journey, and it was a mess. I have the second book. If I didn't own it, I probably wouldn't read it, but I own it. So I am going to read it. But this book was a whole mess, and it's the most likely to end up on my most disappointing worst of the year, because this was not it. So I have decided to only spin 5 more times unless it comes up on the prompt of a DNF, because I'm going to talk about the 5 books that I did read, like, so only 5 more spins. And then at the end, if there's no prompt about a DNF, I'm going to talk briefly about the 2 DNFs of the month. So let's spin again. Okay, so we have biggest disappointment again. Fortunately, I have another book that was one of the biggest disappointments of the month. And that is The House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune. Now listen, don't get mad at me, okay? Don't get mad at me. I just thought this book was so average. Like literally everyone and their mothers loved this book. They said it's the best book of all time, like 5 stars, 5 stars, 5 stars. I haven't seen anyone give it less than 5 stars. And so I went into it hoping it would be a fucking 5 star, right? Like I just hoped that it would be as good as everyone said it was, but it wasn't. Personally for me, it just wasn't that. I thought the story was cute. It's about this man Linus that works at this government issued department where he goes into orphanages that are specifically for magical children because they are never adopted and they're not well cared for. And so he goes into these orphanages to see if everyone is on track, if there's no abusive shit going on, and he just like takes care of that, but never bonds with the children. He never has like that emotional correct connection because he has to remain very objective. And so he goes to this certain place, the worst place, because it's like this island where all the most dangerous magical children live, and he has to find out if the caretaker Arthur is taking good care of the children. And so it was very, the thing that bothered me the most, the writing was cute, the children were cute, but the thing that bothered me the most was just so in your face. Like the life lessons, they were so in your face. Like they could have been written for like a 10-year-old. And I get this is like middle grade for adults, but like it was so obvious. It was just too much personally for me. Like I didn't care. They were like, everyone's different. Look how beautiful children are because they're different and it's so good to be different. I was just like, it's too much in my face. Like it was too like educational, learn your fucking lesson in your face. And I didn't like it. And I also didn't like the romance. There's this romance that happens between Linus and Arthur. I think that you know it going into it, and I didn't care for it. I didn't find that they had particular chemistry. I didn't like Arthur. I didn't really like Linus, and so I didn't really like them together. So it was just a 3-star, middle of the road for me. I don't get it, and it was actually a big disappointment because I was hoping that I would love it as much as everyone else did. Okay, so let's find out what the next prompt is. I only have 4 left. Okay, so we have the most cozy book of the month. Oh, I actually still have 5 spins left. I'm sorry, I don't know how to count. None of the books that I have left are particularly cozy. Okay, I have an answer for this actually. This is going to be a weird pick, but I'm going to explain why it is so cozy to me personally, and that is Exciting Times by Louise Dolan. This book follows an Irish expat that lives in Hong Kong, and she is like 22 years old, so like she's my age, and she ends up kind of in this love triangle. It's like a contemporary where she ends up in this love triangle with an older man and also a woman. And so she is a bisexual main character, and she is kind of struggling to figure out who she wants to be with. There's like this man that's very supportive of her and she has a great friendship with, but he has been very clear that he does not want her to be his girlfriend. And so they live together, but it's kind of weird. And then she meets this woman that she falls in, a Chinese woman that she falls in love with. And this book was just okay for me. I ended up giving it 3 stars because I did like the writing and I did like how flawed our main character was. Like, she was strange and she had a lot of flaws, and I liked seeing that, and I liked following this journey with her. And I'm going to explain why it is so cozy to me, because it is set in Hong Kong. And so basically I used to live for like 5 years very, very near to Hong Kong, and so I used to visit Hong Kong a lot, and it was just a place that brings a lot of special memories to me. And I loved listening to her like describe the place that she was in, and me saying like, oh, I've been there, or oh, I know what she's talking about, oh, I know this food, I've eaten it. And it was just a very cozy experience for me because I miss Hong Kong terribly. But because of COVID, I doubt that I'll go there again anytime soon. And so it was just very cozy to me to hear her talk about Hong Kong, because it is a place that I miss dearly, and it is a place that I have a lot of connection with. Okay, now I only have 4 left, so let's see what's next. Okay, so we have the best writing. This will not be a surprise. If I could mention this book again, I would. Butter, Honey, Pig Bread, the best writing of the year, the month, the century. You decided this is it. But since I don't want to repeat books, I'm going to talk about another one, and that is The Death of Vivek Oji by Ekweke Emezi. I had never read anything by this author. I think that they are an incredible author, and I will definitely be on the lookout for their next books and their backlist, because the writing was incredible in this book. This book follows Vivek Oji, who has died, and you're trying to find out why he died, what happened, because his body is given back to his family and nobody knows what happened. And so in this book, you're just following along his past and what happened to him and trying to find out this mystery. And I have to be honest, I didn't love this book. I give it 3 stars. I was a bit disappointed by it because it was a 5-star prediction of mine and it did not go that well. But I have to admit that it was some of the best writing that I did read this month and this year. I think that the story just didn't particularly work for me. I didn't like a couple of things that happened in the book, and yeah, it just didn't really work for me. But the writing was phenomenal, and I'll definitely read any other book that Quick and Maisie puts out because I think that their writing is so special. And now I'm on the hunt for their story that connects with me the most, and that is a 5-star read for me. Okay, so we have 3 spins left, and I'm not sure how I'm going to adapt these prompts to the books that I have left, but let's see. Okay, most emotional book. I think I know which book I want to talk about. And I want to talk about When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole. This is a thriller book about this girl in Brooklyn that is living in, she's named Sandy, and she is living in one of the classic like brownstone buildings that were originally not built by, but only Black people used to live there. And now all the Black people are leaving and all the white people are coming in, and she's finding it very suspicious. And when certain things start happening, she's like, there's something happening here, besties, and we need to figure it out. I would compare this to Ace of Spades in the theme of the book, and I would compare it to Lock Every Door in the type of building, apartment, complex, weird things happening. But this book was better than both of them. Sorry, I gave Ace of Spades, I think 3.5, rounded up to a 4, and I gave Lock Every Door a 3. This book I gave like 4.5, but like 5 stars on Goodreads. It was so good. And even though it is a thriller book, so you're supposed to be like thrilled the entire time, I also found it to be a very emotional book. I was feeling for our main character and all the things that was happening. Her mother was sick, and all these people were like, she thinks that people are like conspiring against her, and there's all this weird shit happening. And I just found it to be so emotional, even though it is a thriller book, that it just had to be this one. It was so amazing. And I actually had low expectations going in because this has a very low rating on Goodreads, and a lot of people didn't particularly like this book, but I really, really enjoyed it. And so it was also like a big surprise for me that I loved it this much. But it was very, very emotional, and I really felt for everything that was happening. So most emotional book, especially the ones that I have left to talk about, but yeah. Okay. So this is a prompt given to me by Bia from The Bookkeeper, and she just said a book that made you scream, cry, throwing up. So I just wrote screaming, crying, throwing up. And the books that I have left. Okay, I know exactly which one it is. And it is How to Kill Your Family by Bella Mackie. This book was so much fun. It was kind of on the level of They Never Learn by Lane Fargo, because I just found this book to be so funny, and it's literally about our main character, Grace, I think, and she is killing off her distant family members one by one. So it's like another girl serial killer, and I found that I'm really here for the stories. It's just something to think about. But this book was so much fun, and it made me scream, cry, throwing up. Like, it was so much fun. And she literally is writing this journal in prison because she was caught up in another murder, and one that she actually didn't commit. And so she's in prison for this murder that she didn't commit, and she's writing a journal about all the other death that she committed and was never caught for. And so it was just very entertaining. I was just like screaming, crying, throwing up, like listening to the audiobook on the bus. I was like, no fucking way this is happening. Like, it was so exciting. The drama, chef's kiss. Some people think this book is kind of stupid. I think it is kind of stupid, but it's like fun stupid. Like, I really enjoyed it. It was just fun. It was just a good time, and you're just rooting for this character the whole time. A good time. I think I gave it 5 stars also because it was just so much fucking fun. Like, so much fun. And screaming, crying, throwing up for sure. Now, for the last prompt, listen, I only have 1 book left, and so if the prompt doesn't exactly match it, I'm just going to talk about the book because I'm still tweaking a few things about this game, okay? Because I don't have anything figured out yet. So this might change in a couple of months, but let's just see what the last prompt is and if I can adapt it to this last book. Yeah, I can't really adapt this one. Yeah, this doesn't really work. So I'm just going to talk about the book, and that is Infinite Country by Patricia Engel. I think that I would award this book with being the most forgettable. Yikes. So this book is about a Colombian family that is, I think it's Colombian, yeah, Bogota. And they are in through the generations they are kind of like disconnected because the parents go to live in the United States and they have children there, but they're always like illegal immigrants. And then we find out that one of the children has just escaped this nun type of juvenile center because she did something bad. And so this book, I give it 3 stars. I think the reason that this book was, it was just very forgettable because the writing was beautiful. I did really enjoy the writing. I liked the story. The ending did get to me. It did make me have feels, like it did make me feel something. But I think it was just a very forgettable experience overall because it was just very disjointed, and then we have like all these changes in POV, and I didn't really care for it. I wish we had followed just one story because it was a short book, so I wish I had followed just one story. Like, and so we had kind of this different families in places, and we had like going back and forth in between what was happening, and some things did get to me, but I think it was just overall like a very forgettable experience for me. I didn't particularly love it. Okay, so now we're just going to like fly through my 2 DNFs of the month, and one of them was Malibu Rising by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This book was boring. Someone lied to me, or either that or everyone lied, because I read 20% of this book and I could not go through with it. The writing wasn't as good as in Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Her character work, which I know Taylor Jenkins Reid can do, was not present in this book whatsoever, and like every single flashback made me roll my eyes. It probably got better, but I just could not get through it. I could not. It was not for me. So I DNF'd it. And then the other book that I DNF'd was for a video. So I'm going to spoil it a little bit. But I DNF'd When We Left Cuba by Chanel Clayton. God, this book was a mess. It was badly written, badly edited, and it was boring. I read 50% of it for the video, and I was like, I cannot do this anymore. It was not a good book. I didn't like it. DNF at 50%. Okay, so this video is long as fuck. Let's ignore that, but I hope that you did enjoy this. I'm going to change up this game a little bit. If you have any recommendations of how I could do this a little bit better, please do comment them down below. But I hope that this was a little bit more fun than me just going through the list of books. At least this way, it was kind of like a random way to do it. And I hope that you just enjoyed it. And if you did, give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more bookish content. I'll see you in my next video. I hope you have a nice day, and always remember that life is worth reading.